Cool. Let's get into it. Well, thank you for those of you who have come along. We've got some people who will be tuning into the recording as well. So that's awesome. So you've got Hannah here and Kim, and we are running this Q&A webinar on human-centered design for instructional designers. We absolutely love the process. It's what we use for our projects and we get a lot of success from it. So we're super excited to share it with others in the industry. And I think this webinar will add a lot of value to you, whether you are here because you're curious about human-centered design and you want to know more about it. I know some people are here because they're interested in the cohort, which is starting on Monday. And then we've just got others who are interested in our process and learning what we do. So thank you so much for those of you who are here live. You're like bringing the energy for us. So thank you for being here. So yeah, I guess to get started, I'll just provide a quick overview of what human-centered design is, just so you understand what we're talking about. So human-centered design is all about putting your user at the heart of your design process. So when we design learning solutions, rather than just designing what we think is the right thing, what we do is we go out to the learners, we go out to subject matter experts and all the people that are involved in the project, and we get the information that we need from them. And this helps us to create a fit for purpose solution. So we see it as like they're the levers for change. If you're designing training for learners and you want them to change their behavior in order to meet your goal, you really need to understand your learners and the users so that you can influence them, understand what will help them change their behavior and ultimately meet your project goal. So it's been awesome for us because we are able to meet our goals because we're able to influence and understand the context of our learners. So I guess that's what human-centered design is. So we've got some pre-collected questions that have come through, but this is also interactive. So in the spirit of human-centered design, it's all about you and especially the people that have shown up. That's incredible. So please, if you have any questions, I think we open up the floor now to people here to ask a question. Otherwise, we can go to the pre-collected questions. So does anyone have any questions to start us off? Nope.
You go.
Cool. All right. Well, did you want to go? I've just got the pre-collected questions here. Did you want to ask them?
Okay. Question from the audience. What is the difference between human-centered design and learner-centered design?
Good question.
Thanks.
So I guess learner-centered design it's another way of looking at your learning design. And I think learner-centered design is around putting your learner at the heart of the solution again, understanding their prior knowledge, understanding like what their context is and what their world is like. So for me, I think it's very similar to human-centered design. It's just more like a terminology thing and the wording that people use. But both of the processes are around putting your learner at the heart of your solution, understanding them better and creating a solution that is fit for purpose. So yeah, do you have any other?
No, I think that's it. The human you're designing for. I think the terminology learner-centered design seems to be coming from school, like teachers and that kind of industry. So that's where that language is coming into, like corporate kind of industry as well. Same thing.
Because the learner is a human, right?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Question number 2, Hannah. I'm attending for the general information about the structured process. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah,
please?
So human-centered design is a process that's used by lots of different people. But what we have done at Bella Vista Studios is we've taken into consideration all of the different learning design methodologies that we've learned over time. We've sort of combined that with human-centered design. So our process for human-centered design for learning design has 4 stages. So it starts off in the discovery phase, and that's where we're finding all of the information that we need. So we're speaking to the client, determining a project goal and understanding them. Then we're going out to users, conducting user interviews, user observations. So discovery is that first part. And then from discovery, we have the information that we need to brainstorm. So number 2 is the brainstorming part of the process. And that's coming up with ideas for the learning solution that align to what we've discovered during the discovery phase. And then the next phase is prototyping. So once we brainstorm solutions, we want to make prototypes that are like small or like draft examples of what we're thinking of putting out into the world, testing it with our users, making sure it works. And then the last phase is releasing it to the world. So
Can you turn that on? Can you turn that on? Light.
Sorry, I thought someone was asking a question.
Light.
So yeah, that's our process. It's all covered in our playbook. But yeah, they're the 4 stages of our human-centered design process.
And I think the main value of human-centered design, if people are familiar with other models, is like if you think about ADDIE, it really fits into that A for analysis, and a lot of the activities are in that analysis phase, so that deep empathy discovery phase.
And I think that adds like the most value from my experience. Like finding out all of that information in the analysis makes the rest of your project so much more simple, less overwhelming. Like you know what content to focus on, and you're not dealing with pages and pages of information and trying to turn it into something. Yeah. Cool. Next question.
If you want actually a cheat sheet on that, if you go to like any of our Creator Hub human-centered design cohort kind of pages or the playbook, it tells you what's actually in each stage and all the activities. So there's a little hint for the actual specific activities that we do. All right.
Also, if anything comes up for anyone during the webinar, just unmute or send your question or your thoughts in the chat, and we'll pause and focus on that. So just let us know if anything comes up.
Okay, question 3 from the pre-collected questions. I find structuring learning very difficult. What is most important? What do I really want people to know? What order should I present facts or ideas, etc., etc.? How could the human-centered design approach help me structure effective learning?
Oh, this is so like, I have had like a big experience recently with this. So in the past, I have found structuring learning content very difficult, because when there's so much content there, and like the person in the question has asked, like, how are you meant to know what's important? What order do you put it in? It can be very overwhelming. But through human-centered design, you can really focus on the need to know content. So that's like the first part. You discover what content you actually need to focus on to meet the project goal. So that's through finding out what your project goal is, and then speaking to the users and the subject matter experts to find out what information or actions they need to learn to meet that goal. And through that process, you really cut out all of the information that's not necessary. And therefore, as the instructional designer, you're dealing with a lot less information. So finding out what's most important is done through that process, the need to know information. The part that says, what do I really want people to know? It's probably more around what they need to know. So a lot of the times we think that people need to know certain information in order to learn something. But once you speak to them, you actually discover that maybe they don't need to know that. Maybe they already know what to do, but they're just not motivated. And therefore that can change the solution that you deliver. In terms of the order that we present the facts or ideas, so we have a formula that we've discovered through human-centered design. And that is, the first part is the attention grabber. So through the interviews and speaking to the users, we find out what's important to them. So that could be what they want to achieve or what challenges they're facing. And that's how we start our content. And that really like grabs their attention and helps them see why the learning solution will add value to them. The second part is the impact. So we want people to understand what impact they can have as an individual in terms of the project goal. So we also find that out through discovery. The next part is what actions they need to take. So we want to be like really clear with them around what do you actually need to do to achieve the goal, because I think a lot of learning solutions have a lot of information, but people are like, great, there's all this information, but what do I do with it? And then people sort of phase out and they're like, yeah, cool, but I don't really know what I'm meant to do. So we make sure we're very clear on that. And then the last part is resources and support. So we don't think we can solve all of the world's problems in the one solution. So through that resources and support part, we get people to go to where they need to go in the moment to get the information that they need. So it could be like guides, documents, speaking to their supervisor, calling someone, it could be a support number. So that is our formula for putting the information in the right order. And that has come through conducting human-centered design, experimenting, and it works for us. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else on that?
On that one? Nah.
I did. Yeah, I am thinking as well that personas can be really helpful as well. So when I'm not sure if anyone's heard of user personas, but they are super helpful because when you create a persona, I did it recently for a project. If you have that persona front of mind on your desk in front of you when you're trying to figure out what the need to know information is, you can like put yourself into the shoes of your learner and think, what would they actually need? And does that need to be included rather than just adding what you think you need to add as the designer? So it's probably another little tip. That helped me a lot in the last project that we did.
Yeah, because we can get very personally attached to our storyboard or the solution we're creating. And we're like, and this and this and this. But when you have that person in front of you, it's like, no, it's for them. It's not me.
Yeah. What would they need?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably a good point to time to like pause, because there's a lot of like tangible tips there that Hannah shared, and they are hugely beneficial. And some of those benefits include like less feedback from stakeholders, and like it just seems to be quite a peaceful project experience. So I'd love to like unmute yourself and ask any probing or deeper questions at this point to help you be able to apply it back in your role.
So I have a question. My name is Lydia. I work at Latrobe Community Health Service, and we've tried to embed human-centered design thinking into all of our services. So I basically review services, like 11 health services a year, going through that, user that discovery, doing interviews with clients, and then prototyping solutions. And we've reviewed over the last 3 years over 30 services, I think. But I wanted to ask, but I'm very interested in instructional design as maybe possibly another career. And this human-centered design, I find, is everywhere. They call it user design across all these industries anyway. What I wanted to ask is the persona, because we do, whenever I review the client's experience, we call them, they're actually patients, but we call them clients. You can personas in a service. So how do you? We actually try to decide on a persona at the beginning. Like we might pick an aged client, who 65 plus, who has got a
Well, it's just paused. I think the internet's cut out, but hopefully we get
care package or something like that. So we try to I'm doing a general everyone. It paused. So what I wanted to ask is this, there can be all these different types of learners, like even if you think about adult thinking. So how do you pick a persona that is just one rather than, like catering for the 4 different learning styles, for example? That's what I wanted to ask. Do you just decide on the one persona?
You want to take it?
I don't mind.
And design your learning module for that?
All right, we got you. We know what you want to know.
All right, cool. So yeah, we have come across this where we're thinking like, how do we cover all the different types of people in our audience? So what we do is, it really is thinking about like the most common person that you're going to be dealing with, and bringing in all the data from, say, it's like interviews or observations of understanding the people that you're designing for. But I think something else that comes up for us, like we don't always have one persona, and potentially you would have more than one. So if you do have the different types of clients, you can have more than one persona. So for example, with us, like working for a government, we might have a persona for outdoor workers and indoor workers. And those 2 personas would help us to ensure that we're creating a solution that works for both, or potentially we have a different solution for the different audiences. Do you have anything else to add on it?
I think, yeah, when you can start with one persona, or maybe you've identified many personas that need to be completed. And it's about doing that exercise. And the moment it starts to feel resistance to, this is now not fit for purpose because it seems like this persona has now split, and it is now identifying through the process that this is now two separate personas, go with it. That's the best way to do it, rather, because that is human-centered design. You know, you can think, you know, and then you go out and do persona activities, and then it reveals itself that, oh, actually these two groups for this particular solution, we can actually mold them together and hit the mark with what we need. But this one here, oh, it's getting a bit more specific, we're gonna have to split them out. And that might just look like, it happens a lot with supervisor employee level training, where they go through the same journey, but then there's a point where the supervisor needs to have a conversation with an employee, for example, where the employee doesn't need to know that. And that's just like, basically they go on the same journey, and then this little bit of the training takes a little branch out, and then they come back together. So if you're feeling resistance, then it's a question of, okay, how do we make this more human-centered and specific to the needs of those users?
Thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions? People of the live audience.
I have one more question. So for us, you know, the center of the client, so we've got finding out the client needs, doing the research.
Lydia, I feel your internet is very choppy on our end. I'll just ask, would you mind asking your question in the chat, and then we can address it, because we're not hearing fully.
Oh.
So yeah, chuck it in the chat and we'll get to it, definitely. Anyone else? Otherwise, we'll go to another predetermined chat or question.
Guys, sorry, I'm in pajamas here, so I've got the camera off. Sorry, it's late where I am. I put one in, but I don't know whether it went through because this is like fairly late when I signed up for this. I'm just actually starting out a course in technical writing and instructional design. And I was curious about alpha and beta testing. How you set those up. Maybe, like, I'm just literally starting out, so I don't really know how this stuff normally goes.
Yeah, cool. We got your question.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sina.
So with that, so that's around just confirming my understanding of your question. You're wanting to test your solution or product with your users before releasing it. Is that right?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So what we do is we have a testing or like review process for each stage of our project. So there are different elements that take place. So for us, it's generally the content and then the look and feel. So we get feedback on the content first to make sure that it's fit for purpose, and that's done through sending it to the client. They share it with their users and they also provide their feedback on it. So that can be either in a meeting with them, or it could be they like write it, like manually type comments against the content that we give them. And we make sure that we do that before moving forward with developing anything. So yeah, we're not always with them, like watching them or like face to face with them while they're reviewing, but we always get that feedback from them. And then it's the same with the look and feel. We'll either have a meeting or get them to provide written feedback, and we make sure that it's fit for purpose for the users and the client before moving forward. Do you have any other?
I think to get even more specific and going back to the process side of it. So what we do is we co-create a success statement at the very beginning with key stakeholders, and that's approved. And we have milestones throughout that are very specific. Love it.
I did warn you.
You look great. So that success statement is guiding the whole project. From there, we can get learning objectives. They're approved with the client, which means that there's no back and forth. It's very specific to, this is the learning objective. Now we're doing the content for that learning objective. And now the next learning objective, which normally we do as a storyboard, which is a PowerPoint, and we hand that over to the client. And with that, the learning objective is on each screen. So the content on this screen is relevant to that particular learning objective. You can get the storyboard template for free on our Creator Hub. But that is a process by having it such at the key milestones where anyone could say no or change their mind in the future, we are getting feedback on it. And yeah, we think of it from 3 lenses, which is, or sorry, it's probably 4 lenses. So it's the overall project and the success of that. There's the content, there's the look and feel, and then there's like the development, whatever the tangible thing is. And for each phase, the question you want to ask yourself is, what specific feedback do I need from other people to help me achieve the project goal? And that will help you not just go, hey, I'd love your feedback on this. And then everyone's like, and you're like, oh, which is valid or whatever. So that will help guide you get specific feedback at that project level, at the content level, at the look and feel, so that you're very well able to manage intentional and objective feedback that adds value to the project and is not personal opinion.
Okay, interesting. Sorry, just one other question then in relation to that. What is the success statement exactly? Sorry, I'm a total beginner here.
Yeah, basically we just call it a project goal, same thing. So it's there's a really good formula, if you write this down, by Kathy Moore, and it is how to determine a business goal. And it's essentially something like X or Y, X will improve or decrease by this time period when learners do X behavior. So it's writing something like that is normally tied to a business's strategic objectives or something like that, that you are in, the problem that you're there to solve. Not just like, go do a code of conduct. It's like, well, what specific things do we need to improve in the business so that we know there's no code of conduct issues, or why should this project exist in the first place?
Gotcha. Thanks very much, ladies.
All good.
Great.
All right. I'm going to
Lydia's question.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for putting it in the chat. So how do you involve clients to co-design solutions? So Lydia runs focus groups with clients and staff to do that. But how do we do it at Belvista Studio?
So we run human-centered design workshops with our clients. So like Kim was just talking about, the success statement or project goal, we have a meeting with them at the very beginning and go through a creative conversation to come up with that. So they're like fully involved from the very beginning of the project. They know what we're trying to achieve. They know where we're heading. So that's the first stage. I guess we do like most of the human-centered design activities, because it is human-centered design, we're doing it with the humans that we're designing for. So we run empathy maps with our clients and end users. We like conduct user interviews. We do user observation. So all of those things really involve the users and the client. And if you can get the client involved in those aspects of it and in the human-centered design activities, they can start to see the value that it brings. So that's really useful as well. And then like we were saying before as well, like for each review round, we make sure that we involve them, get their feedback, so they're really on the journey with us. And getting us, it's never just like us designing for them, it's always with them. We're always like going through the whole process with them, and we just set checkpoints where we either have a meeting with them or send them the solution for review or the prototype. Yeah. Is there anything else you would add, or?
No, that's it. And brainstorming.
Yeah, brainstorming is a good one.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one to get their buy-in and come up with ideas that are related to the context. So what we do is we have lots of different little brainstorm activities that we run with the clients. But basically it's like we have our project goal and then we run activities to come up with potential ways to solve it. And it's like divergent and convergent thinking. So we go like really big to begin with, and we have all of these ideas. They can be like wacky, whatever, like crazy ideas, whatever comes to mind. And then we refine it down to what is actually possible in the client's context. And yeah, so they're always part of the process and co-designing with us.
Yeah. The more involvement you have from decision makers or users, the better the solution will be, the better the project cohesion and success will be as well. And I think the mindset for us as instructional designers or problem solvers, whoever, whatever your role title is that we're facilitating a process. We're not experts. We're facilitating a really effective problem solving process. And we do it the way Hannah just described. All right. Next question is, how do I show human-centered design as a value to a client or stakeholder?
So we basically use human-centered design to influence our stakeholders and help them to see the value in it. So how that looks is we step into their shoes as the client and think what would be important to them. So like, is it they want to make money? Is it they want their team to perform better? Is it they don't want to be stressed and like working overtime because nothing's working with projects? Do they want to change behavior and make a difference? So whatever those things are, we step into the shoes of the client, or we ask the client, we get that information from them, and then we look at how human-centered design can help them to achieve those things. So for example, if they were wanting to save money, like that was a big thing for them, they just wanted to meet the goal but save money, we would think, okay, so human-centered design will help us to solve the right problem. So we would explain to them at the very beginning of the project, we're going to discover what the actual problem is. We're going to speak to the people involved and make sure that you're solving the right problem. Because when you're solving the right problem, you're not having to redo work and spend extra money to fix things later down the track. So we adjust our language using human-centered design in order to influence them, depending on what's important to them.
Yeah.
Do you have any like examples of like conversations you've had with clients or like?
Well, I think, yeah, it's really, you got to know that you can never convince another human being to do something in life in general and with stakeholders and clients as well. So if you can't convince people, what can you do? Because if you try to convince them and they say yes reluctantly, even though they're like, yeah, and behind they're like, oh my God, and they don't let you know that, you know, there's going to be resistance and resentment, and it's not going to go smoothly over time. So don't try and convince people. But what can you do? Well, you can influence and you can control certain things. So when we, a few years ago, like learned about human-centered design, we were like, oh my God, mind-blowing, incredible, this will change lives. But our clients didn't get it. Our stakeholders didn't get it. And so we're saying, oh, we want to take a human-centered approach. And they're like, no, Bella Vista Studios, can you please just do the click next e-learning? And it was like, ugh. So basically, we'd just start talking about it, right? And we'd say, you know, there's this process we can do that seems to be having a big impact in the world. And we tell stories. So this is how X company has used a human-centered approach. This was the problem they were trying to solve. And this is the result they got. And we just have conversations like that with people. And then some of them would say, cool story, Kim, move on, just do what we told you to do. And that was cool. But I knew that I had tried my best to influence. What happened with those clients was 12 months later, they'd come back and they say, you know, that project you worked on, we actually want to do it. It's not really having the impact. And you know, that human-centered approach that you were talking about in your activities, can we give that a go this time? So that's a win for me because, you know, I've influenced them. They're just not on my timeline. And they've had to do it, take a bit more money to do it, I guess, because I got to do it twice.
Yeah.
So you can just start talking about it. The other aspect is like, and you guys, I would say, are probably intrinsically motivated. That's why you're here in your own time learning to do this and curious about human-centered design. So sometimes you're compelled, you want to do the best for your learners. And I think that's why you're here. So what we started to do was go, okay, well, the client said not to the full process, but we have a job to do and we have a deliverable. The deliverable, for example, is a storyboard. So behind the scenes, we're going to do human-centered activities, but we're not going to tell them because they're like too much time and we can't bring those people into the room. So we would do it.
Yeah.
If you think about a persona, you can do it in 15 minutes. So it wasn't blowing out project timelines. It wasn't like stressful for us as individual practitioners to do that. So we just sneak in little activities for our own benefit so that we could create better solutions that served our clients and serve the learners better. So I definitely encourage you to do that as part of your own process. And then what would happen is like, oh, it's like you're speaking to us. It's like you work here. And it's like, yeah, it was good to do that persona activity for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So try and sneak those kinds of things in. And then I think, you know, over time, there is an opportunity as you build confidence and really want to be a strategic partner and demonstrate your value as a practitioner, because like we are so valuable instructional designers. And it was mentioned earlier around like it's happening in marketing, it's psychology skills, it's product design, user experience, like the worlds are coming together, change management. So these are skills for the future. So if you can start experimenting with the mindset that I believe we are supposed to have is being curious. And instead of convincing people, have them convince themselves. And how do you do that? You ask them questions. So some examples are, what is the cost of getting this wrong? So if we don't do and create the best solution that solves the problem in the most effective and efficient way, what does that mean for your organization? And just let them have you tell that story. What is the financial cost of getting this wrong? What is the financial cost to your business at the moment that you need this in the first place? So they start thinking about it as not a band-aid reactive solution. They then start to go, oh, actually, it does have an impact on employee morale. And like, we're having all this like culture, fluffy conversations, but it's not having an impact. I wonder why. So they start to think about their own problem differently. And when you ask those questions and the data that they give you back is then when you can use the magic powers back on them, which was the script Hannah gave you. And you say, hey, it sounds like this is important to you. And this is the consequence of getting it wrong. Let's solve the problem this way. And then the penny drops for them. Like it makes sense. So you don't have to convince, they've kind of convinced themselves. That would be my tips.
I love that. Love it. So there was like an example that popped up in my head that may help you to understand how it can play out as well. So I did a project recently for like a health and safety course, and originally we didn't have access to the learners, so it wasn't part of the project scope to interview the learners and get that context. But what I did was like I looked on YouTube at this specific audience group and like watched that audience group speak on YouTube. I thought about when I was in that position and did human-centered design activities sort of like on the down low, and they wouldn't have seen it happen. What happened from that, the content, we got really great feedback on the content, and they were like, wow, like it's on point basically, like it reflects our environment and all of that. They ended up seeing one of our videos about personas and us talking about that, and they suggested that we conduct a user interview. So it just shows that we didn't even have to tell them like we want to do interviews. They saw the value that came from the content and were like, we want you to do it. So they ended up coming to us. So that just shows what can happen over time when you show them the results that can come from it and they get insight into how you're getting those results. They can sometimes come to you, which is incredible. Like that was so cool.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Lena, I feel like you've put your camera on because you might want to ask a question.
Yeah. You're very intuitive, but I guess that goes with the job as well, right? But I think you're extra intuitive. I almost forgot my question now. Sorry, I don't want to monopolize it either, so I was trying to wait a little. So I'm actually starting out in this. I'm basically doing a course at the moment, and we have been asked to design a course. So I've just submitted my proposal to do that. And one of the things that I was thinking of that you mentioned earlier on was brainstorming. So I was wondering if you have any kind of specific, like I've submitted the proposal. So I've gone through kind of like the evidence behind it. Like we had to choose our own project basically for the course. I've gone through the kind of evidence backing up the need for it. I'm kind of like, which I may kind of flesh out a little bit more. But I was thinking kind of backwards as well, like, because it's only kind of initially very short. I was thinking about the brainstorming element. Are there any kind of techniques that you use for brainstorming, or is that the storyboarding?
No, Hannah will have some ideas.
Yeah, so we have a few different ones, but something that we do is we give a time limit. And we let people know that no idea is right or wrong at that stage. So it's like I was speaking about before, like going really wide and getting all the possible ideas. So it might, for example, it might not be an e-learning course. It could be stickers that go on a bin, or like it could be the most random thing that could solve the problem. But basically we present the project goal to them. We give them a time limit and say, just write everything that comes to mind, like whether you think it's right or wrong, get it all down on paper. Post that, we get everyone to come together, share their ideas, and often someone's idea that might not be the right solution can spark ideas for other people, and you facilitate a conversation based on those ideas that have come up. You can also get them to vote on ideas, so you get them to think, okay, what's actually possible within our budget, with what we're enabled to do within our organization. You get people to vote on the best ideas. And then you can prototype them to see if it will help meet the goal and work. Another thing that we've done it's a bit random, but it's actually been really useful to help people to think outside of the box, is we have a random word generator. And so we like a random word will come up, like say, for example, kitchen. And then we get everyone to think of a solution relevant to the word kitchen that would help them to solve the problem. And this can really help them to think outside of like an e-learning course or a tip sheet. And because then they're thinking, oh, like how would it work in a kitchen? What could we put in the office kitchen? Maybe it's something on their coffee mugs, or maybe it's stickers. And it's just like these ideas that you wouldn't have thought of beforehand.
Yeah.
And I think that's been really useful to get people to think differently.
Yeah.
Sorry, is this with your, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Is this with your team or your clients or both?
It depends. Sometimes it's just our team. Sometimes it's with the client.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's whoever wants to be involved in that process. Ideally, you do have your stakeholders involved, because then they're not like, why are we creating a cardboard spaceship for this solution? Not that we've done that yet, but
sure we will one day.
Yeah, it's better to have them buy in the whole time so that they know. So that random generator, you just Google a random word generator and that will do it. I'm trying to think. There was a really cool, I listened to a podcast the other day and they were talking about experience design. So the designer was basically someone that creates environments. So if you think about even like a concert where there's strobe lights and smoke, and when do things go off, or how do you stimulate senses in a museum? So he designed environments like that. And then the interviewer said, oh, you must have the most creative office that you work from. And he said, no, it's a blank. It is the plainest. It's almost like a hospital. And he said, that's really intentional, because if we go in with preconceived ideas, we're trying to solve it to something we're already primed to. So he said, when we go into a blank 4-wall thing, our mind is clear. So we're able to effectively problem solve, because we're like, we have no stimulus basically. So I even just thought about how would that work in a workshop? And it was like, well, what if we had a piece of paper, a white piece of paper, and each individual just had to stare at that for a period of time, no talking, and then write down what comes up, because it frees the mind.
Oh, yeah. That museum analogy is really interesting, like in terms of kind of sensory design and stuff. That's really, really interesting.
Yeah, and that would lead me to another activity that I think is really effective, and this is, I'm like a massive advocate for it, is just what does this look like in the real world? If we saw someone do it, If we were a fly on the wall and we saw someone do it, what does that look like? Because that's where we focus our brain into actions and behaviors and not information. So that's one that I critically kind of rein people in on near the end of it. And then another one, just another brainstorming activity while we're on the topic is we have like a little template, but you could just make it up and it's kind of just stimulus, right? If you're a Google, how would you solve this problem? If you had $1 million, how would you solve it? If you had $1, how would you solve it? If you had 1 minute, if you had 10 years, and putting those parameters out there, if you had paper, if you had a brick, that allows people to think differently outside of what they're kind of coming into a shell with. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you very much.
All good. And just Google brainstorming ideas for any more.
Thanks very much.
Go on, Carolyn.
I was wondering, what are some like non-examples? What are some examples of things that are not human-centered design?
I don't understand. Can you please answer?
You know, like it came out of a need for something. So what were people trying to change? Because I'm new to the field, so I'm wondering what it was like before. They're not considering the learner.
Yes.
So, you know, I consider the learner.
Yeah, good on you.
Yeah, okay.
The world is a better place because of you. Ainsley, were you going to answer there?
I was going to say what springs to mind immediately is click through PowerPoints with investments to create engagement.
Yeah, 100%.
For something that is just information awareness, or back to your question, Kim, what is in the real world? So people ignore that and then go, but now we need an assessment and I need to give them all this information. So they're just going to sit there for an hour and go click, click, click.
Yeah. So I guess traditionally in like learning and development, people see a problem and they see training as the way to fix something. So we have bullying and harassment complaints in our organization. We need to fix that. We are legislated to communicate this health and safety legislation to the people in our organization. If we don't do it, we can get a fine. So the problem comes to the business like that, and then they go put out training, and then we have everyone ticking the box to say they've completed the training, and then we won't have this problem in our organization. But how that plays out then is people will just go, okay, well, if the legislation says blah, I'm just going to copy that and put it into a training course and then push it out to someone. But it doesn't actually consider what is this in the real world. How does someone apply that on the job? It's more just information. So I kind of guess I think about it in that if someone could Google it, it's probably not effective training and they haven't considered the user. So yeah, it's probably more reactive and not speaking to anyone. Another fault, I guess, at this point in our timeline as an industry is that instructional designers or people creating training believe they have to have all the answers, that Hannah and I should know all leadership skills, all communication, how to blow up mines and get minerals and extract something from the earth, how to prevent sexual abuse in schools and have teachers report on that. We can't be the expert in every single problem that needs to be solved in the world. So, but when some instructional designers believe that they need to, and they go out and research on Google and find all of it and put it into a course. But if you were to go out and seek to understand what does this problem look like in your world, help us create something that's going to help solve this problem, that's the difference. And that sounds like where you're at, and yay. But yeah, it's not where learning is at, training in the world yet.
It's an example I can think of is, say that people are using like they're really slow with their customer service and customers are angry about how long they're on hold on the phone. In the past, we may have thought, oh, we need to like train people to be better at customer service. We need to get them to like be quicker with the customers. But through human-centered design, it may reveal that it's the system or their computer that's slow and it's not them. So in the past, you'd be trying to like train people to have better customer service, when if you just spoke to them, they'd be like, it takes like 10 minutes to load one screen. Like that's why it's taking so long. So real human-centered design, it's like, yeah, solving the right problem. Oh,
all right. I'm conscious of time. I can't believe where it's come from. So we're supposed to end right now. If anyone has a burning question, can you just pop it in the chat or say it in one sentence? And there's other questions we have to answer for the people that want the recording. So I'm going to quickly go through it. Sam, I think that's a model. ADDIE is another model. Agile is a project management model. Someone wants to know which lends itself best to human-centered design. Do you want me to answer it really quickly?
Yeah.
I'll just say that that's probably the wrong question to be asking. It's not the right problem to be solving, right? So the world is overwhelming. Instructional design is overwhelming when you're like pedagogy and theories and information and all this kind of stuff. So don't worry about that. Think about what is the problem I'm currently trying to solve and how do I get there in the most effective and efficient way? And when you think about all the models out there, if you are familiar with them, well, first of all, you might be learning about them, right? Theories, pedagogy, whatever that is, you might be learning about them. So you just go, I'm going to experiment with this in my next project. And the minute it's like resistance or not going well, you just pivot and stop doing or adapt and improve, right? But if it is something where you have all of them and you're like, oh, where does this fit? You got to go, what am I trying to achieve? Which, how or practical thing will help me get there in the most effective and efficient way? And you just go, I am stuck right now. I don't know how to proceed. Then the problem is I actually need help. I need feedback. So then you are in Agile, right? You're going to go out and get feedback and then do something with that. Or it's like, oh, I don't know what to put into my storyboard. Okay, well, how would I figure that out? Maybe I should go talk to the people that do this job. Okay, cool. I'll set up some interviews. And now you're in the analysis phase or the human-centered activities of analysis. So just think about what's the problem I'm trying to solve? Where am I currently at? How do I close the gap for anything you do in life? And do we have any questions?
Transition to into instructional design.
How do you transition into instructional design?
So I think advice for that would be to check out our YouTube channel because we have like so much information on there on how to become an instructional designer. There is a specific video that I'd recommend. It's called How to Become an Instructional Designer, Frequently Asked Questions. And it just gives people like quick and fast all of the questions that people who are transitioning into instructional design ask and gives them the answers. So look that up on YouTube. Yeah, people have found it super valuable. We've got great feedback. So whoever's asked that, check out that video and I think that'll answer your question.
Yeah. And we will send you an email after this with the resources that we've mentioned, because I won't put them in the chat now and you probably lose it when the Zoom goes. Any burning questions before we log off? Well, thank you for participating live with us. It was exciting.
Thanks so much, ladies. This has been really useful.
Our pleasure. Is that because it was human-centered? Yeah, well, thanks for showing up. Thanks for being curious. Like you're putting yourselves in like a better position to succeed in your careers by being curious and trying to experiment with human-centered design.
This is amazingly helpful though. Thanks a million.
You're welcome.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, fabulous.
Bye, everyone.
humans.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.